Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for the 21st SF Doc Fest. The festival will be screening June 1st through 12th at the Roxy Theater in San Francisco, as well as online. We're joined today by a collection of filmmakers whose films will be presented with feature films within the program. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm just going to kick it off and ask that you introduce yourselves and let us know which film you're here with. And we're going to start off with Jessica.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jessica Sarah Flom, and I'm the director of Abortion at Descartes.
Wonderful, thank you. Hi, Susanna, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having this little film in the program. My name is Susana Barron, and I'm the director for Un Barco para mi mamá.
Thank you so much. Hi, Sheko, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Shaka Liu. I'm the director producer of On Patrol.
Wonderful. Hi, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Sarah, thank you so much for having us. My name is Jeffrey G. Chin. I'm the co-director of SFGOVTV Portraits, Frank Jang.
And then, of course, last but certainly not least, hello, Frank. Thank you so much for sharing your story and coming to join us today.
I gotta have fun.
Yes, it seems like that's your MO. I love sharing your story. And we'll kind of just kick this back and maybe go in reverse. Let's talk about the genesis of your films. How did you find your subject and come to share them with us today? Jeffrey, why don't you talk about kind of how you came to meet Frank and how the film came together?
Yeah, I've been very lucky to know Frank for many years. I would see him at a lot of the Chinatown events, and he was the one always picturing and capturing the stories of the Asian American community in San Francisco. And sort of this past year, we lost a lot of legendary people and community leaders. And, you know, I felt that it'd be very important to honor Frank while he's still working at it. And yeah, I just feel honored to bring his story to light with our team at SFGOVTV.
Thank you so much. And Frank, how is this for you? How did Jeffrey approach you, and how did you decide to participate in this project?
It was interesting. He said, "No, I don't want to do a video for myself. I'm always documenting other people." He said, "It's your turn." I said, Corky Lee was a famous photographer in the East Coast. I'm like the San Francisco counterpart. So I've been documenting photos for the last 22 years. So I figure, I think it's time.
Well, I'm so glad that we get to highlight your work and the value that you bring to the community. So thank you so much for making this happen and feeling comfortable to step out from behind the camera.
Yes, it's very difficult to be in the camera instead of taking the photos.
Well, now the table is turned. You'll have some reverence for your subject. Sheko, hello, thank you for joining us. And I think that actually your work and kind of the story that's highlighted through Frank were kind of a beautiful accompanying piece, kind of showing an inside lens of the community, and but sadly your lens is having to turn upon the activism that is needed to keep our brothers and sisters safe within our communities.
Yeah, so I actually started, producing this piece in the early of 2021, as a video journalist and a producer at NBC, I've covering the Asian American issues. It's always been part of my beat. And at the time, there is this new wave of anti-Asian hate crimes. And I was just looking for like a stories, like how do I capture, a subject and a topic so broad and bring it home to a very personal levels. At the time I've been seeing there are like many, talking heads panel discussion of anti-Asian hate crimes, which are wonderful. But I was just searching for a story. How can I build on the conversations that's already been happening in the media, in the community, to push the narrative forward? And at the time, because I'm based in New York, I end up doing a story in Oakland on the West Coast. It's just because like when you're looking into a subject, like where do I even begin with such a big topic? So I casted an extremely wide net. I talked to, almost I think 50 people, 18 organizations, just to find like what that story is. And what really drew me to Oakland was, I remember in February 2021, I saw a local press conference of the Oakland mayors talking about anti-Asian hate crime. And she had a Chinese American man, I believe he was the president of the Chinese Americans Business Association or something. And she kind of using anti-Asian hate crimes to attack the defund the police movement. And I knew at the time within the Asian American communities, there was a debate between how much police was necessary, coming off of 2020 Black Lives Matter and with the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes. So that's what really drew me to Oakland. And I was just like, because I started wanting to do a film or documentary about, the relationship between the Asian and Black communities. But then really, I ultimately found this group of very quirky and lovable people, like Asian with attitudes, and their story really embody, how Asian Americans are inspired from a lot of the civil rights movement from the Black community, and how they are continue to using that inspiration and going forward with the activism at, in the light of the anti-Asian hate crimes. And therefore, they became my subject matter, and I went over to Oakland and filmed them.
Thank you so much. And it's such an important thing to highlight, especially in a locale that is so historic for its activism and community protection in many ways, with the Panthers, with the Guardians. So thank you so much for highlighting this story. Hi, Susanna. Thank you for sharing your intimate, gorgeously rendered personal film, just really so expressionistic and lovely. So can you talk about how you came to be with this
absolutely story? I mean, for me, my mom is my superhero. I felt like it was the least I could do. Basically every time we would meet, or I would go and visit her and we would have dinner, she always would recount her border crossing story. And every time she would recount it, it would always be with the same emotion, with the same vivid imagery. And I really never thought to try to convey her story with any sort of medium, except I started taking classes and film, and I've always kind of been in a multimedia artist and have done charcoal drawings. And just one day when really like her story was so powerful, it all came together as I was hearing her story in my mind, that this could be such a powerful thing to produce, not only for ourselves and for myself and for my mom, but for other people who are going through similar experiences, and who I would love to maybe just have this piece to encourage them to like continue in their journey, especially since I had learned also during that time that Border Patrol produces their own media to kind of persuade immigrants not to cross the border. They make films, they make songs. So I was really fired up by all of those things. And it really was a journey. The whole making of the film was quite emotional, and I think something that I'll never really experience again. And I worked with 16 millimeter film, but also in thinking of like the best way to tell this story, I also brought in charcoal stop animation.
So beautiful.
Thank
you so much. And speaking about getting fired up in response to current events, I will say, Jessica, your film was one of the last films I viewed as I was compiling the festival. And it just so happened to be the week that the SCOTUS leak happened. And holy shit, the world that we live in now is increasingly shrinking, and the way we think about people as being regulated. And I find your work to be an act of activism in and of itself, like providing these resources. Did you have any idea that this was going to happen as you were creating this film? You know, how did it come together? And obviously there's such a sense of urgency in sharing this information.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. You know, I started the film 2 years ago, about February 2020. And at that moment, it felt like a very urgent story to tell. And I really had no idea, or could have never hoped that this would happen, and it would be even more urgent. But you know, what I did know is when I actually came across this story, it was an article on Facebook, and it was specifically profiling Dr. Gompertz, the Austrian physician Dutch physician, her organization's in Austria, who provides pills through Aid Access. I saw that article about her and immediately sensed that this could be the potential for a film, and was really looking around to see if anyone had worked on this in this space and had profiled these characters, and there was no one out there. So I thought I had to do it. You know, I also realized, you know, as we started moving into the pandemic, that this was a environment that was really changing a lot. In the film, we talk a lot about the telehealth options that opened up during the pandemic. And so that was also really exciting to be able to capture through filmmaking, as that was just constantly shifting as we were doing our interviews. And it really felt like the ball was starting to get rolling, and the ways that we were understood were proper ways to provide abortion was just completely changing because of the circumstances. So it's been a really wonderful journey. It's been a very tiring journey as well. As you mentioned, with the SCOTUS leak and things like that. It can feel like a losing battle sometimes, but our film has always been about hope, about, you know, revolution, about activism, about taking your life in your own hands and making the best decision for your life. So we still have hope despite the current circumstances, and we just want this information to be out there.
Thank you so much. And I think I'm going to turn it back around. It's heartwarming that these stories are out here, but also so tiring that we have to continue to remind folks that our reproductive rights matter, that we as immigrants matter, that communities that do not reflect a narrow-minded view of what Americanism is matters. So can we all talk about what you hope that the audience takes away from your film? And Jessica, I'm going to throw it back to you. What you know, obviously these resources are radical. There's such a radical legacy of folks making reproductive alternatives available. And I think that a lot of what your work is doing is continuing within that tradition. But what do you want folks to take away?
I think the biggest thing is really what I took away and what I learned through the filmmaking process, which was just a radically different definition of pro-choice. I had always identified as that, you know, throughout my life. I had supported reproductive rights, but I kind of always thought about pro-choice being the decision to either have or not have an abortion. But really what I learned through this filmmaking process, that pro-choice is also about what that abortion looks like, and people deserve choices in their lives to be able to advocate for themselves and be able to have abortions that, you know, work for them in the best way in their own lives. And you know, the beautiful thing about self-managed abortion is that for some people it is the alternative and the best way that fits in their lives and the best method for them, but it's not for everyone. And so you know, our film focuses on self-managed abortion, but it also doesn't necessarily say it's the only answer, because it's not. You know, it's one of the answers for some people, but a plethora of options is necessary to provide people that real control and real choices in their own lives.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Susanna, and actually Jessica also, like, I kept thinking about the phrase personal is the political in your work. And Susanna, I feel like highlighting your mother's very personal story also exposes a political aspect of how we should be able to view folks, in that these are personal stories, but they are shared with so many in their journeys to come to the United States or immigrate to any country in general. But can you talk about kind of what you hope that folks take away from your work?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. For me, it was really important in making the film that I didn't just show someone who was like a victim or who was suffering. I also wanted to show that here's this woman that, even though she had gone through these horrific things, not just once, but twice, that she was able to make a life for herself and really thrive through that. And so there's no reason why other people shouldn't help immigrants with the things that they need, with laws and policies and protections. I really want to show that, within our own community, we're able to make these things happen for ourselves. So I can only imagine how much greater things would be if it was a more collective effort with politicians and with community members, and that it's not a hopeless issue, that really any small change can make a huge impact.
I agree. Thank you so much. And definitely on these themes of collectivism, advocacy, which I think we also do really see in your film. Shaka, can you speak to what you hope the audience takes away from sharing these stories?
Yeah, totally. So when I was filming and making this film, it was in March 2021. It was right after the shooting of the 6 Asian women in Georgia. I was in a very dark space. And if you remember at the time, the majority of the country was still in lockdown. Vaccine was just started rolling out, filming a big rally that was my first time since 2020 to be with a very big group. And it was a very therapeutic process for myself also to be able to go through this with a community. So, and that's what I want to show in this film, and I hope the audience will take away, because I remember at the time with the wave of anti-Asian hate crimes, that a sentiment across the community is nobody cares. Politicians don't care, my friends don't care, media don't care. So I want to show that there are people who cares. We care about our people, our communities. The community cares, and that our community is able to transform trauma in a very meaningful way. We can build upon our pain and make something beautiful and meaningful out of it.
A moment, but thank you so much. I feel like that's very touching to think about the strength of our communities and collectivism, and bringing that all together, and honestly bringing this back to Jeffrey and Frank, right? Jeffrey, through your work, you are really highlighting important figures within the San Francisco community that give a face to some of these issues on a very personal level. So can you talk about what you hope that folks take away from your work?
I think one of the important things that a lot of us have learned through this whole pandemic is that, life is really precious, and so is community. And so, I feel like a lot of people in the younger generation, sometimes we overlook the contributions of people who've helped build our communities. And so in this project, I really wanted us to really give a delicate take and capture the people who build the community behind the scenes, the people who are invisible. And I felt that was incredibly done by my co-director, Jen Lowe, who she did a lot of projects on food highlight programs. And I said, well, imagine if she can make food look so good, how about people? And so, telling the story about someone that is so beloved by the community, but not always celebrated, I think that was important, and to sort of honor honor this invisible legacy that actually is the glue that keeps, all communities and of course our city of San Francisco together. So that's what I feel so special about this project.
Thank you so much. And Frank, you did it. You shared your story. What do you hope that folks take away from not only highlighting you, but highlighting your lens within your community?
Well, sooner or later, there will be probably a few additional Chinese American photographers will take over my position, because I've been doing for 22 years. I figured 25 years, 3 more years, it's enough. I'm going to pass the torch to anybody that's interested in documenting. And it's very difficult for today photographers to make a living, find a day job, document history before. History is not sexy. And there's not really enough interest. A lot of photographers, a lot of video people, that they're fragmented to document anything. But I document Chinese American history in Chinatown, predominantly. So I do about 250 events a year, and I'm busy.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining. Sadly, we've reached the end of our time, but I feel so lucky to have the opportunity to present your films and share them with our audience. So thank you all again so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
It was wonderful to view everyone's films as well. I really enjoyed all of them. So congratulations to everyone.